We begin this morning on a serious note with that terror unfolding at Michigan State University last night after a gunman opened fire on campus.
Yeah, this morning we know at least 3 people are dead, 5 others are wounded. Police responded to a call about shots fired at an academic building on campus shortly after 8 p.m. And just moments later, another call came in about more gunshots at the student union nearby.
I heard people screaming they're shooting, and that's when I began to run. Never did I think this would happen.
Michigan State University police released these images overnight of the man they say is the suspected gunman. They say he was found hours after the shootings dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Meanwhile, Michigan State University and the surrounding community, they're grieving this loss, just utterly devastated by the tragedy.
This truly has been a nightmare that we are living.
This is a day of shock and heartbreak here across our campus and our region.
We've got law enforcement analysis and reaction from a student who was inside that student union when the shooting started. But first, let's get the very latest this morning. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard is here with that. And Vaughn, thanks for being here. So much of this developed overnight. So what's the latest right now?
Yeah, good morning, guys. There was so much unknown into the dark hours of last night, more than 3 hours in which this gunman was not located on the campus of Michigan State University. And to put the size of this campus into context, you're talking about 400 buildings, 50,000 students here in the heart of East Lansing that did not know where a gunman who opened fire in at least 2 buildings was located. Take a listen to just one of the students' harrowing experience.
Just as we freshly blockaded the doors, apparently people heard shooting, they heard the door open, and it's this giant stampede of people headed toward me.
It was really scary. Like, it was actually really, really scary. Considering Oxford just happened not too long ago, it's like, are we safe anywhere?
Guys, at this hour, there are 5 individuals who are still in the hospital. To our understanding, 3 individuals are now announced deceased. The identifications of these 8 individuals is not clear at this time. Michigan State University is not saying whether they are students or faculty.
Vaughn, in overnight updates, law enforcement, campus police, they were saying that they'd received some of the first 911 calls a little after 8 p.m. Walk us through the timeline of things. And you mentioned there were 2 different buildings where there were reports of shots being fired. How far apart are those buildings?
Right. Both of these buildings were public buildings at that hour. Again, this was the campus of Michigan State University. And just after 8 p.m., there were calls, 911 calls about shots at Berkeley Hall. This is an academic hall where students were. And then the second building was just about a 5-minute walk down the road. You can see that map there, just the close proximity. The Michigan State Union is not only open to the public, but it is really the gathering place for students at that time of night there. And that is where officers responded to downed victims at both of those locations, guys.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard, thanks so much for that update.
And let's bring in NBC News terrorism contributor and analyst Jim Cavanaugh. Jim, police say the suspected gunman died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That changes aspects of the police investigation, but it obviously doesn't mean they're done investigating this. What is next for detectives?
Well, they always want to look, Ellison, behind it to see, did he obtain the gun illegally, for example, just as one example. Did he, some other criminal confederate or gun trafficker supply him weapons? So there could be other criminal charges behind it, even though he's deceased. Did anybody encourage him? Was he a member of any, radical group or hate group or something like that? What was his motivation? All that is necessary, maybe to help us on the next one, to help stop the next one. Unfortunately, we have many answers already in America about this question, and we don't want to act to change it. But nevertheless, we still want to find out why he did it. What we would do is we call a psychological autopsy. We go back and look at his actions, for example, completely in the last 6 months. Who was he talking to? What was he saying? Did he leak out his intent? Could it have been stopped? And, about 77% of these shooters and killers, mass killers, do leak their intent to colleagues, students, online, and they have a chance to be stopped. So is that true with this guy as well? And we also see a lot of, a suicide leitmotif running through about half of these mass killings, and I think we'll probably see it in this one as well.
And Jim, you touched about looking into motivation, next steps that then in theory would fuel public policy. Let's talk a little more about that if we can. The state of Michigan, their open carry laws have been in the news in the past. We don't have a whole lot of information at this point in terms of exactly what type of weapon was used. But when it comes to officials looking at this, when it comes to your perspective as someone who has deep experience in law enforcement, what are the next questions you're going to be asking in terms of the weapon used, and why is that significant? What do you think should happen after events like this?
Well, we know, Ellison, he's carrying a handgun because we can see it in the photograph. So we know at least he has a handgun. We do not see a long gun. Of course, a handgun can be devastating. In Virginia Tech, the killer there used 2 handguns, and he killed 32 people on a campus. So handguns can be very deadly in proximity, in close quarters. So I think what Michigan needs to look at, and many states need to look at, is to make let's take, for example, the 77% of people that we know leak before these killings, let their intentions out. Target them, target that issue. So when someone leaks out and they threaten a mass shooting or talk about a mass shooting, that the police can charge the person with making a mass shooting terroristic threat. We don't do that. We send the person for mental health counseling, and then he tells the counselor, oh, I was just joking, and then nothing happens. There's many cases like that, where he should be charged. If a person made a specific threat against another person, we would charge him with a misdemeanor terroristic threat in most states. So that's the first step. The state can do that. And this federal government should lay on a law akin to the Lautenberg Amendment, which says, the Lautenberg Amendment says, federal law, that if you're convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, you can never buy a gun. You can't have it, possess it. You can't walk in a gun store and get it. You're blocked by the instant check. So you pass a law that says the same thing. If you're convicted of a terroristic threat on a mass shooting, you can never buy a gun. That would at least target the people who are leaking and have the intent. Shouldn't hurt any lawful gun owners. Certainly the political rivalries could come together on something like that for America so we could stop more of these.
And right now we know that the suspected gunman, the now deceased shooter, is 43 years old. Beyond that, police have not given a whole lot of information. They've said they don't believe he was affiliated at all with Michigan State University. We will talk to you again, Jim, as we learn more about this shooter and these events. Thank you so much for your time.
And we're joined now by Jacob Catalina, who's a junior at the university, who was actually inside the student union when this shooting started. Jacob, thanks so much for being with us this morning. First of all, I want to ask how you're doing. Are you even able to process any of this yet?
Yeah, it's been a very long night. Probably only slept a few hours, to be honest, and it's still processing in my head what happened. I mean, we were locked down for so long, and then it's really hard to comprehend. I still, even with my parents, with everyone, I just haven't been able to really put words to it.
Yeah, I know you were inside the student union when this happened. I just can't imagine going through something like that. If you could walk us through what you saw inside the student union, were you able to keep in contact with your family at the time and let them know you were okay?
Yeah, so we were sitting down eating dinner in the food court area, and I was with 2 of my friends. And then as soon we heard one gunshot, which at first it kind of just sounded like a tray hit the ground, it wasn't that I didn't think anything of it. And then 2 other gunshots followed, and everybody started running towards the exits and sprinting, and people were tripping over people, and everybody was trying to get through the doors. And I just remember flipping over a chair to try and could have cover. And then I just made a run for the door with my 2 friends, and we were able to stay together. And then as soon as I was able to get outside of basically those doors of that video right there, that we saw all the police cars pulling up, and we just kept running.
Once you realized that this was a shooting at your school, what was going through your mind at that time?
I just make sure people were safe. I mean, The first thing I did was I called my brother. I have a twin brother who's also at Michigan State, and I called him to make sure that he was okay. And then after that, I was able to help my friends and make sure that everybody was kind of helping each other. We were finding other students and other people, other employees all running, and we were helping each other and all coming together in this time of need to assist each other.
And that coming together is most likely going to be key in trying to get through this and finally process it. Jacob, thanks so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, for more now, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, what are we hearing from the White House this morning, and do we know when President Biden was first briefed on this?
We do know, Ellison, that last night President Biden was briefed by his team about the shooting shortly after it unfolded. And then we know that he actually had a conversation with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer about the situation. Of course, as we have seen far too often in this country, this is a president who has talked many times in the last couple of years about the scourge of mass shootings. And as we have seen again too many times, the FBI, local law enforcement responded immediately, and the president has also offered to the governor any federal assistance, whatever help the White House can offer, which again we have seen happen time and time again. The governor was actually just at the White House over the weekend as part of the major governors gathering with the president, and part of that festivities, a ball, a giant meeting with all of the spouses. So the two were actually just together for most of Friday and Saturday, and then again we know that they spoke last night, and the White House is offering any possible assistance as this investigation continues. And I think you can expect the president to, when he does speak to this at some point later today, talk about the fact that this is something he would like to see move in Congress when it comes to gun safety and violence prevention. He has repeatedly called for the assault weapons ban. He has been able to do some things when it comes to gun legislation in the last year or so, but there's so much more to do. And again, there's still so much more to learn about specifically what happened here and what kind of weapons were used. But in the broader picture, the president says that really Congress needs to step in and do.
And Monica, if we can keep you with us for a little bit, we have some other news from the White House this morning where we could use some of your reporting. Yesterday, the Biden administration announced that it is forming an interagency team to address unidentified aerial objects.
Yeah, this move comes as more people and leaders are demanding increased transparency about these objects and as bipartisan criticism grows on Capitol Hill. Along with the alleged Chinese spy balloon shot down more than a week ago, the White House took down 3 other unidentified objects over Lake Huron, Alaska, and Canada just this past weekend. That's a number the Associated Press calls unprecedented in peacetime. So we want to bring back in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. She's joined by NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kuby in Brussels. Thank you both for being with us this morning. Monica, back to you. The White House has been under a lot of fire from both sides of the aisle here about what they say is just a lack of transparency, a lack of answers for these objects. So what can you tell us about this new team and how it can address that?
Yeah, well, they're hoping to answer some of these many questions that Americans have, that lawmakers have, about whether these new objects in the sky, there are just more of them, or whether we're just detecting them because we've been able to open up a wider range of radar data, and the U.S. military is simply just assessing, detecting, and reacting to more of them. And so yesterday at the White House, the National Security Council spokesman John Kirby announced there would be this new interagency team that's going to look at that precise question, talking about the detection and analysis of these objects. Again, we know that the initial Chinese spy balloon is one thing, and then they're putting these other 3 objects, which they can't really define beyond that, in a different category. And so we're hoping to learn a lot more about that. But the White House yesterday did try to answer some of these questions, but they still aren't able to say much more about these other 3 objects because they're in the process of recovering pieces of them. And that process is very complicated by the fact that there are tough winter conditions in the Arctic waters for where one fell, the other over the Yukon in northern Canada, and then the third that plunged into Lake Huron, the depth of which is also a complicating factor. But the White House did say yesterday that President Biden was first briefed on all aerial objects and this trend that we're seeing back in 2021 for the first time, that this is something the White House has been aware of, but that they are also cognizant that they need to dedicate more resources to it now, given all of these growing questions. And the pressure does continue. The lawmakers on Capitol Hill from both parties have really said they would like the administration to be even more forthcoming. The administration says it's not like we have the information and we're holding it back. We just simply need more time, they say, to determine what these other objects that were shot down actually are.
And Courtney, Monica touched on what feels like the million-dollar question right now. Are there more of these unidentified objects in the sky, or are we just tracking them more closely? Have you been able to speak to any of your intelligence sources who feel like they can answer that question?
Yeah, we've been asking that question literally since this began, is what's happening here? Is this a new phenomenon and there's suddenly all of these unidentified objects in the sky, or is it just a factor of what Monica was just explaining about this change, or sort of this change in how the U.S. military is looking at their radars? So the way they've almost refined the way that they're looking at some of these radars that gives them more fidelity or a better view of different altitudes and some smaller objects that in the past they might have just sort of written off as clutter. They're now looking at a little bit more closely here, and in some cases, as we've seen just recently over the weekend, they're sending aircraft in to try to find what these smaller objects are and determine whether they could be a potential threat. And that's one of the big factors here in these most recent downings of these unidentified objects, these three after the Chinese surveillance balloon, is the potential for a threat. There are sort of three categories here. One is, do they present a threat to people on the ground? Two, do they present a threat to civilian or military aircraft that are flying at certain altitudes? And the third is, do they present a larger national security threat? Could they be flying over an area with sensitive information or sites on the ground that would be a potential national security threat? And that's what has been factored into these decisions to take these balloons out. Now, we heard for the very first time last night from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, one of the people who's been in the room during the decision-making process to shoot these objects down. He spoke for the first time about what kind of threat these unknown crafts present. Here's what he had to say.
I want to reassure Americans that these objects do not present a military threat to anyone on the ground. They do, however, present a risk to civil aviation and potentially an intelligence collection threat. And we'll get to the bottom of it.
So civilian aviation, that's the altitude they're flying at. The potential collection threat is the piece that we still don't know. Are these surveillance assets or not? That's one of the questions we keep asking here.
All right, Monica Alba and Courtney Cube, we appreciate your time and reporting this morning. Thank you.
All right, turning now to the latest out of Turkey and Syria, where time is running out for rescuers to locate survivors who may be trapped under the rubble left behind after last week's devastating earthquakes. The death toll has already surpassed 35,000, and experts expect that number to rise as rescue missions turn into recovery efforts. But this morning, there is still some hope. The 17-year-old boy seen here was pulled out from under a building earlier today, 198 hours after the earthquake struck. His 21-year-old brother was saved shortly after. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobayea is on the ground in Turkey with more on these miraculous stories of survival despite the odds.
Good morning. Well, so many hospitals were either damaged or destroyed or are overwhelmed with earthquake victims that the Navy has turned several ships, including this one, into field hospitals. And we're told this morning that people who are rescued from the rubble are being brought directly to these hospitals for treatment. And there have been more rescues today. A 17-year-old pulled from the rubble along with his brother after being trapped for nearly 200 hours. They spent 8 nights in the debris from that collapsed building. But for all of these incredible rescues, there are many more people who are victims of this earthquake. We saw 5 people being pulled from one collapsed building just yesterday. The Turkish government today said that nearly 42,000 buildings will have to be demolished because they're so badly damaged. And the vast majority of those will be homes and apartment buildings. And remember, the first quake hit at 4:17 in the morning, so many people were sleeping when it hit. Sadly, many more bodies still to be recovered. For survivors on the ground, the conditions still dire. The temperature hasn't gotten any warmer. It is still very cold at night. People are living in tents, sleeping in their cars with little access to toilets, no access to running water. The situation is even more difficult across the border in Syria still, where entire villages have crumbled. They've only received 2 United Nations aid convoys over the past almost 8 days now. But the UN chief says the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, has now agreed to open 2 more corridors from Turkey into Syria, into those rebel opposition-held areas, so that more humanitarian aid can get through to those people.
And that aid is much needed. Kelly Kobayea, thank you.
And closer to home, millions of Americans under winter and wind alerts this morning.
Yeah, meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now for more on this. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. Happy Valentine's Day. And we're watching 2 storms that are bringing a 1-2 punch of rain, some wind, some snow. We can see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour at times. And as you mentioned, millions under winter and wind alerts. So we're watching western storms. Where you see the blue, that is snow falling. The rain is in the green, the brighter colors being the heavier rain throughout the central and southern plains. That's going to be the theme on this Valentine's Day. So right now, 16 million Americans under a winter alert. We have a blizzard warning in portions of the upper Midwest and northern plains, including Fargo. We also have a winter storm watch that is in the blue. A winter storm warning is in the pink. And we're going to be watching this over the next couple of days. So many under wind alerts. 96 million people impacted from the west, the southwest, the southern plains into portions of the Gulf Coast states and even up to the Ohio Valley. And we're going to see winds gusting that could cause some power outages across these areas. Up to 30 miles per hour, 40 miles per hour, even up to 50, 60 miles per hour. We're expecting winds gusting near 60 miles per hour in portions of Texas and also through Oklahoma. So as we go throughout time, this is a setup here. We have that first system that will bring rain, wind, and snow to the Midwest, also portions of the northern plains. And then that second storm moving into the Rockies, that's going to bring another round of heavy snow. We're going to be measuring that that snow in feet. On the warm side, we're looking at some really heavy rain, and by tomorrow, we're going to introduce a threat for severe storms. So we could see some tornadoes, we could see some hail, and even some really heavy rain that's going to lead to flash flooding. Thursday, that snow and wind will be from Kansas to Wisconsin, and heavy rain and gusty storms from Ohio to Louisiana. So this is what the severe weather threat looks like for tomorrow. It's a big area, 14 million people at risk for hail, and even some winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. A few tornadoes are possible. That includes Memphis, Little Rock, Dallas, down to Alexandria, also Lufkin. And we're going to see another threat on Thursday. So sort of it's a 1-2 punch once again in terms of a severe threat. 32 million people at risk on Thursday. Look at that stretching from the Gulf Coast states all the way through the Tennessee Valley up to the Ohio Valley, Cleveland, Nashville, Montgomery, and also Mobile. You are in the mix there. Back to you guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.